Lupicinus, who is a little bit the worse for wear on drink at this point in the party, loses his rag completely and demands that his soldiers round up the two kings, take them into custody, kill their men, and he panics and makes the most god-awful decision ever made, I think, in probably late Roman history.
Hello and Happy New Year to all you listeners. And for those in Iran and China, I'll get to you in February and March. I don't know if you've noticed the new logo, but I've had a new one created at vast expense. I think it looks very fetching and you don't have my ugly mug on it anymore. So don't be alarmed that you've seen a change. Today's pod is with Simon Turney, a best-selling writer, and I'm discussing the Gothic wars and historical fiction and history writing in general, as well as Viking drink preferences. Coming up, I've got the Mau Mau Uprising, a chat on Masters of the Air, the new TV series from the makers of Band of Brothers in the Pacific, a chat on Pearl Harbor, and much more. Please share, rate and review if you can, but in the meantime, it's me talking with Simon Turney and the Gothic Wars. Simon Turney, welcome to the pod, and thanks very much for joining me. It's a great pleasure to have you on, and we're going to be talking about your novel. It is relatively new, but you have written some since, but it is Para Bellum.
Yes, indeed.
And I think it was out in July, wasn't it?
I think so, yes. July was a bit of a run of festivals, so I was kind of blindsided by a lot of things.
Right. Well, according to the all-seeing God that is Amazon, it says it was out in July. So it's best we don't disagree with that. And so for the benefit of our listeners, it's set during the Gothic Wars. And we're towards the end of the 4th century, dear listeners. So this is around, okay, you're going to pick me up on this. But I think we're talking, the Gothic Wars are 375, from 375, is that right?
376, yeah.
376, right. 376, yes.
There's a lead up, so 375 is quite valid.
Well, it's quite interesting because it'd be good to, because your novel deals with I know it starts, I think, in 381, but it's to do with I guess really what we're talking about is the steady but certain disintegration of the Western Roman Empire. Actually, no, we're in the Eastern Roman Empire, actually, aren't we?
But it is the disintegration of the West largely, yes. It's momentous times, momentous events, and a moment of great change.
Yes, so mass migration. That's what the main cause of the war, isn't it?
Yeah, it's essentially, I mean, I don't want to give any sort of too much away in terms of the book, but essentially the background, I mean, it's there for anyone to read into. Its history. It's the Gothic tribes north of the Danube. There's the Turney and the one whose name I've instantly forgotten because I'm being recorded. The Turney and the Grethungi, who come down to the Danube because they're being pressured by the onrush of the Huns coming in from the north and the east. And they're seeking sort of safety. They're seeking a place to exist. And Rome is beyond the Danube. So they apply to the emperor and say, please can we come? Please can we settle? And yeah, I mean, that's the start of it all. I mean, it gets horribly complex pretty quickly. But it is the mass migration. It's the Huns pushing the Gothic tribes who then, butt up against the Roman Empire, and the friction starts.
And I guess the temptation is, well, certainly for me, and I'm showing my ignorance here, but the temptation is to kind of dismiss the Huns, the Vandals, the Goths as this kind of mass of savages. And that's really not right, is it?
No, increasingly, as Roman history goes on, the bleed between the what they would call the barbarian peoples and the empire itself is more and more pronounced. So I mean, by the end, by 410, you've got the most senior general in the entire Roman Empire is Stilicho, and Stilicho is half Goth. So I mean, you get these names. Ricimer is a Roman general at this time, and then Stilicho, and these are Gothic names. So I mean, there is so much sort of similarity in some ways between the two peoples by that stage.
Well, the Goths were very much desperate to become part of the empire to protect themselves from the Huns, as you say. Why were the Huns? Were they growing in population? Why were they pushing up against the Goths and therefore then the Roman Empire eventually?
Well, I think that, again, it's your migrations. The Huns have come from the east, seeking better land. At the end of the Hunnic invasions, I think it's the Battle of Chalon in the 6th century. The only reason I think that a lot of the pressure lifts is because there's just not the land. The Huns come from the east, looking for better ground, more lush ground, easier pickings for raids, obviously, as well. And they end up pushing the Gothic tribes south and west.
Okay, so, well, when your book opens, and we should mention the hero of your book, Flavius Focalis. He's a legionary, and he's been involved in something that will kind of help to start the Gothic War a few years earlier. Is that right?
A great calamity, a really, really ridiculously stupid moment in history, triggered by a really ridiculously stupid man in history. And I don't think, I mean, again, it's a matter of historical record, so I wouldn't say it's giving out any great spoilers if that story comes out in this.
No, no, not at all. No, there's not at all. I actually, because I was reading into it before this, because it did this event, which I'm sure you can describe better than I, but this event had a few echoes of what you sometimes see in fantasy-based TV shows with a
Red Wedding.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Essentially, this event is the whole reason I wrote the book. A lot of my impetus for writing books comes from stumbling across historical events that I'd previously overlooked or were fairly obscure, or historical characters that are obscure and interesting. And I mean, it's not that this is a particularly obscure event, but because my focus is usually earlier Imperial Rome or Republican Rome, I'd never really considered writing about it. But I got reading it one day and I thought, God, that's a book waiting to happen. I mean, in fairness, Gordon Docherty has already written books about the era as well, so he's included a lot of these events in his series.
You and Gordon have got a good relationship. You've written a few books together, haven't you?
Yes, and his work is superb. So I don't want to.
Links are in the show notes. Sorry, links are in the show notes for all the listeners. I should remind them.
So you've got the Thuringi and the Grithungi. The Thuringi cross the river. They send a message, which is delivered to the Emperor Valens, who is in Antioch at the time, preparing to invade the east, saying, "We need land to settle. We are being pressed. We want to settle within your lands. Let us in." Valens, of course, there is a tradition of Romans letting barbarians settle within their lands. They produce, good farm workers. They produce manpower for the military. It's quite useful. But Rome is usually very careful about these things. It usually disarms them, sets a lot of conditions, splits them up so that they can't be a danger of a rising against the empire. All these various things. Unfortunately, at this time, Valens is off in Antioch, and most of the army is with him. There's very little military supporting the Danube border. Valens knows damn well that if he says no, he's facing a huge invasion of Goths across the river, because they might not take no for an answer. So he's kind of pressured. He has to say yes. He has to say, by all means, come in. And he gives them very favourable conditions, because he's over a barrel. He says, yes, come on in. You can stay together. You can have your land. We'll feed you until you get yourself settled, and we'll sort it all out. He does have what's left of the military stop the Grithungi from crossing the river, so that he's only dealing with half the problem at once, which is sensible. But the problem then comes with his lesser officers dealing with the situation in his absence while he's in Antioch. Because the next thing you get is the Gothic tribes, these Thuringi, south of the river, en masse, a large number of them, and they're getting hungry. When you have a large influx of people, they go through the foodstuffs in that area very quickly. So they start to starve. There are records of them selling their children for dog meat to the Romans. It's a horrendous situation. And the problem is the idiots in charge at the time in the sort of Thrace and the Byzantine area.
This is roughly Romania, Bulgaria,
Yeah,
Thrace, northern Greece,
yeah,
more Bulgaria and
yeah,
Romania.
Bulgaria, south of the Danube, but that area, everywhere from Constantinople across to sort of Serbia. This area, the guy who's in charge, the general in charge of settling them, is a guy called Lupicinus, who I think goes up there for top 5 idiots in Roman history. Because between him and his sidekick,
quite intrigued to know what your other 4 are.
I think that might be one for another day.
Yeah.
But yeah, him and his various sidekicks are horribly corrupt and basically sideline a lot of the food that should be going to the Thervingi, sell it on the private sales, and essentially are stiffing the Thervingi over what the emperor has promised them. They're starving, and he's sort of playing around with it. So they start to get bolshy, they start to get angry, they march south, and when they get to the main imperial city in the area, Marcianople, he invites them to a dinner. He will have a dinner, and he will invite... Oh, by this time, they've also got the Grethungi coming across the river, because they won't be stopped now. So he takes the kings, 2 senior kings of the Grethungi and the Thervingi, and invites them to a grand dinner in the palace in Marcianople, where they will hammer out all the problems and sort out peace deals. Brilliant. Except for the fact that during that meal, the Goths outside the walls start to get restive because they're unable to buy food. The Romans won't let them buy food from the local traders. They start to argue, to fight, and when the tidings of this reach the Lupicinus and his people inside, Lupicinus, who is a little bit the worse for wear on drink at this point in the party, loses his rag completely and demands that his soldiers round up the 2 kings, take them into custody, kill their men, and he panics and makes the most god-awful decision ever made, I think, in probably late Roman history. His men attack the guards of the 2 Gothic kings. One of the kings is almost certainly slain because we never hear anything about him from this moment onwards. The other one, who is Fritigern, who is clearly quite wily, talks his way out of it, blusters his way out of it, essentially threatens them, says, if I don't walk out of here, think what's going to happen outside these walls. So they relent, they let Fritigern go, which is maybe the next bad decision, because the next thing that Fritigern does is start a war that will take place over a number of years and will end with an emperor dead on a battlefield. So yeah, I think it's a really important moment, and it's the turning point, I think, in all Romano-Gothic politics, in the whole system of dealing with the barbarians, and the start of a decline that never really gets arrested.
And that's the in for your story, that dinner, really, isn't it?
It is indeed, yes. Because the thing is, I looked at it and I thought, yep, okay, Lupicinus is an idiot. I'm not going to write anything from his point of view because I don't want to write from an idiot's point of view. I didn't want to write from the Goths' point of view. So I thought, well, who else is involved? Well, of course, there's the men who actually do the deed for the general. When Lupicinus says, take them, kill these people, who is it who does the taking and the killing? And that's my characters, because these are unsung characters in history, but they played a really pivotal role. So I wanted them to have their moment.
As you said, a lot of your novels are set in the Republic, the fall of the Republic, then the Civil War.
The early Empire and Principate, yeah.
When you embark on a kind of new period of history, is this quite a kind of daunting prospect for you? Because I get the impression there is very little you don't know about the Roman Empire.
I wish that were the case. I'm very conversant with the era from Julius Caesar through to maybe Septimius Severus. I get a lot vaguer from the crisis of the 3rd century onwards, because really you can study the Roman Empire for an entire lifetime, and there will be many, many things you never get the hang of. There's just so much of it. And, when you're talking about a civilization that lasted from, 753 BC to 1453 in the end, you're only ever going to know parts of it. My is, as I say, largely, as you said, because when Christianity has been made legal, but paganism has not been made illegal. So the majority of people are Christian, but there are still pagans, and everything is legal. So it's all around at the time. And so it's a really strange time, I think.
Yes. So you've got this clash of, well, I guess, paganism and Christianity. That must make for I don't know, is that a different moral outlook for Romans around this time?
That's a good question. Because of course, Christianity at that time is not the Christianity we have now. It's not as formalized. It's not as codified. It doesn't have the set church there as we have now. It's a much different thing. As is, evidenced by the fact that at this time there are two great branches of Christianity going on. There's an Arian and Nicene Christianity, and that's also involved in this particular event, because the Goths and the emperor who dies are all Arian Christians, whereas the empire on a whole is Nicene Christian.
I was interested in your writing career, really, because you've been writing many novels for a long time. You've got a running series called Marius Mules, which is a great entry point into that. What's the best way? Is that sort of the triumvirate, the first civil war with Pompey and Caesar, and
it covers Caesar's, the main period of Caesar's famous life.
So Gaul all the way, right?
Gaul, the civil wars, and then the last year or so of troubles in Rome leading up to his death.
And what number are you on with that? Because
it is complete. Book 15, which deals with the events of the Ides of March, came out this year on the Ides of March. So now Caesar is dead and the series is over. I've put the pen down on that one for the last time.
When did you first start that, though?
I started writing it in 2003, but it didn't come out until 2009 because it spent a lot of time bouncing around between agents and publishers, eliciting very polite no thank you letters for quite a long time.
Yeah, well, because you have a mix of self-published and published novels, don't you? Or published by a publisher.
Yeah. Very increasingly fewer of the self-published ones now. Now that I've finished Marius's Mules, the only other self-published one I deal with is Praetorian. And other than that, everything is through the publishers Canello and Head of Zeus. And also non-fiction. I've got one through Amberley with non-fiction, one through Pen and Sword Coming with non-fiction. Two that were out with Orion some time ago. So I think essentially I'm playing the field with publishers.
Well, it's quite interesting because we deal with that blend authors. What's your experience between the two? I mean, was it Marius Mules is obviously not something you dropped. You wrote 15 of them. So
yes.
Was that just once you started, you couldn't stop?
I think essentially by the time I got to about book 3, and I didn't even know whether I'd write a second one, but it went down surprisingly well. It took me completely by surprise. A friend of mine, Robin Carter, said when he first read it, said, "Why haven't you got this on Kindle?" I said, "What's Kindle?" And he said, "Put it on Kindle." And then I did, and it went woof. It just took off. That was just at the start of the digital boom. So essentially, it completely took me by surprise. And it was so popular by the time I'd finished the third one that people were clamoring, saying, "When's the next one coming? When's the next one coming?" So, which they've been doing right the way up to the 15th. And even now that I've said, that's it, it's done, I get emails, probably at least 5 or 6 emails a week saying, "When are you continuing it? Are you going to do Augustan Rome? Are you going to do the wars with Antony and Cleopatra and so on?" So, I mean, I've kept the series up, and I've kept it self-published largely because it's been my baby. It's the way it started. and I didn't want to relinquish control of that in any way. But self-publishing has huge benefits in a lot of ways. It gives you a lot of personal control and personal involvement. It also, however, takes away any kind of cushion, any any certainty from it. It's a completely uncertain world, and I think these days, now that self-publishing is much more common than when I started, it's a much bigger thing. It's much harder to break into the market now. So, but yes, I mean, it certainly has its benefits. But on the other hand, so do publishing. So do going with publishers, particularly if you choose the right ones. I will say I've had experience with publishers who have been very enthusiastic, and it's just sort of fizzled out. The guys I'm with at the moment, both Canelo and Head of Zeus, are both hugely enthusiastic about their work. They love books. They love the stories. They want to get them out. They want to be involved. They want them to be good, and that's what I like. I would hate to be with a company that is corporate over interest. These guys are interest over corporativeness, whatever it is. But yeah, I like to work with people who are enthusiastic about the subject, and they are.
But with self-publishing, do you get a more direct contact with your readers, or it sounds like it's easy to contact you through your whatever means? We've got social media now. Is there any difference?
I don't think there is these days. I think there used to be. I think again, when I started, back in any time around probably 2009, when I was really starting properly writing, the traditional authors, your Bernard Cornwells and all these sort of people, were very much removed from the reader. I think that anyone who had traditional publishing deals, because social media wasn't what it is now, and the need to be out there wasn't there. So you had the traditional, reclusive writer thing going on. People were allowed to do that. I think now, if you're a reclusive writer, you are risking not selling so many books, because people like to speak to the author now. People like to engage, to see them at events, to be able to talk to them online, even just to discuss. I've just read your book. Oh, I think this, which is, it's great in a way. Sometimes it's frightening, particularly when they're right and you're wrong. But yeah, I think it's different now. I don't think it's different between self-published or traditionally published. I think it's different now to what it was then. And I think any writer who really wants to sort of to engage, who wants to know what people think, who wants to sell books maybe, needs to be more involved now.
Yeah, Bernard Cornwell has taken to responding to questions on his website, and I don't think he needs to sell many more. So,
but Cornwell is a nice guy, it has to be said.
Oh, he's great. He's absolutely, he's great. And I mean, because I wanted to ask you about historical fiction, because he's how I certainly got access to certain periods of history. I mean, the Napoleonic Wars because of him, because of Sharp. But I mean, that's why historical fiction to me is just, I love it, is because it's that kind of entry point. Is that, what do you think is special about historical fiction? Do you think that there's I don't know, is it, it's like limitless numbers of periods of history you can write about, aren't there?
Yes, there are two things I'd like to say. That first one is, yes, as you say, there is always something to write about. There are always stories that want to be told, even from the smallest things. My Ottoman Empire series, there's 4 Ottoman cycle books. They all sprang from one tiny event, which was in 1481, when a church, the Nea Ecclesia in Constantinople, now used as a gunpowder store by the Turks since the invasion, detonated in a lightning strike, and bits of it came down on the other side of the Bosphorus, leaving a huge crater. And I thought, what a story! Why does nobody know about this? That needs to be in a book. That's, I think, what historical fiction is. I think it's just as the writer wants to write these stories, I think readers want to know these things. Readers want to see these amazing events. And I was at an event on Friday. I was talking down near Northampton, and discussing this very subject with them. And it's amazing how many people I speak to who say, I get my history from historical fiction. They say I don't read textbooks. Textbooks are too dry. Well, most textbooks, not all, but most textbooks are too dry or don't concentrate on what I'm interested in. But I read historical fiction. That way I can really feel like I'm in there. I'm part of the subject, and I'm entertained while I'm learning these things. Which also led me to the discussion about the value of historicity in historical fiction, because it's my great belief that any historical fiction has to be fitted in the historical framework as closely as possible. Use real events, use real people, and don't play around with the history. Fill in the blanks. I mean, everyone has to fill in the blanks because there are plenty of blanks to fill in. And yes, you can create characters, but not characters that conflict with the history as we know it. If you start messing around with that, it becomes fantasy, not historical fiction.
And that's interesting because that's certainly true. You know, you can't start changing years around and names and places. But do you ever find yourself in a bit of a hole? I don't know, with, say, I don't know, food, or this is a bad example because it's so obvious, but you wouldn't put a potato in the Roman Empire.
Oh, I've been so close to that. I'm so close. The first release of Praetorian, the first Praetorian book I wrote, he gets pelted with a tomato. I never even thought about it. Never thought about it. I had him pelted with a tomato. I got deluged. And, you know, in a matter of a month, it was back out with pomegranate instead. But I mean, I know tomatoes weren't around, but, you know, when you're in the throes of writing, it's, whoa, pelted with a tomato. So it just slipped in. You do. I mean, my latest one is writing Viking stuff. I've been writing Viking stuff. Actually, I wrote the end on book 5 today.
Oh, well done.
Thank you. But yeah, reading about the Vikings, because we all think about Vikings. It's a drinking culture and a fighting culture. Everyone wants to see drinking and fighting in Viking stuff. There's a lot more to it. There's trading, there's religion, there's all sorts. But everyone wants the drinking and the fighting. Axe throwing and swearing and curses and you know, axes everywhere. But looking at the Vikings, the first thing I had to think is, what are they drinking? Because for a start, they're not drinking wine, not unless they can get it through, you know, probably through Danish suppliers. They did drink mead. They did drink sort of strange spirits. They drank beer, ale of sorts. But one of the main things they drank was a thing called bland, which is essentially fermented milk.
Ooh, not sure about that.
Yeah, exactly. That had not occurred to me as a thing until I started going, oh yeah, what are they drinking? And started playing around looking to see what the diet was. So yeah, there's a lot to sort of study and learn. And I think the more detail you get and the more you get right, the richer the story becomes.
Now, one series I wanted to mention that I know made an appearance in our book of the month recently is you did a series on emperors who have a bad reputation.
Yeah, officially the Damned Empress series.
The Damned Empress, that's it. Yes.
Yes.
Commodus, Caligula. Why did you choose to write about these characters?
It actually started. It was my agent who started it, because I was at the time I was writing Marius Mules and I was writing Praetorian. I was entirely self-published, and they said, "Look, we want to get you in with a bigger publisher, but you need something new. We need a new story. How about tackling a big name?" And we threw around a few ideas, and Caligula was the name that sort of floated to the surface. And I was very, very nervous about doing it because, I mean, it's a huge thing. It's like trying to write I, Claudius.
Yes, I mean it is of all the fiction. Maybe the Eagle of the Ninth is the other famous one.
But I looked at it and essentially I thought, well, what can I do with Caligula that's different? I mean, I don't want it to be Malcolm McDowell in the dreadful 70s film. I don't want it to be John Hurt in the it wasn't John Hurt. It was don't want it to be these characters from
Derek Jacobi.
Exactly. No, that's Claudius.
Oh,
anyway. I don't want it to be these characters that are already iconic on the screen, no matter how peculiar and lewd and dangerous they are. I wanted something different, something that hadn't been done before. And in my sort of reading around, I came across a book by a guy called Alice Winterling, which is a re-examination of Caligula, trying to find other explanations for what's generally considered his madness and badness. And he does it. He's very, very convincing. His text is very convincing. And if you believe everything that you read in his text, which is all well backed up, you see a totally different Caligula, not the mad, dangerous. I wouldn't say that he was a nice man. He clearly wasn't a nice man, but I think he was the product of his environment. I think he was perfectly sane. I think he was dangerous and the product of a really dangerous youth. And I wanted that. I wanted to tell the story of a Caligula, a man, not a monster. And from there, it's gone on. I re-examined Commodus, whose megalomania is well renowned. He named the months of the year after himself, wanted to rename Rome after himself, named the legions after himself. Everything was named after himself. But the more I looked into his history, the more his sort of removal from the public eye, appearing in public in the arena, throwing javelins at elephants and so on and so on and so forth. It all smacked very heavily of bipolar. And I thought, that explains him a lot better than, oh, he was mad, or oh, he was a megalomaniac. When people make statements like he was mad, there's always a reason. There is no such thing as just mad. There's a reason behind all these things. I just wanted to explore that with him. And then I've done the same. Domitian, I think, was a micromanager. He was the third one I did. A micromanager to the nth degree. And again, possibly slightly paranoid. I think he was probably registered quite somewhere along the autistic scale. But again, I don't think he was dangerously insane or anything like that. I don't think he was evil, as they call him. I think maybe he was cruel, but that's not the same thing. And I've just recently done Caracalla. I won't go into that because it's just new, so let people read that one and argue with themselves. But yes, I just like to see these people as people rather than monsters or caricatures.
Well, yeah, the temptation, I guess, to judge figures of the past is just, well, it's a very powerful one, because you immediately compare it with today's society and therefore assume that we are far more enlightened and better. It's not necessarily the case.
No. Well, the other thing about the emperors, these are guys who suffered damnatio memoriae after their death, had their names chiseled off things, their coins bent, their portraits bent, their portraits smashed, and so on. The thing about them is all we have in terms of accounts of their lives are written by usually 2 or 3 sources. Those sources later on in the empire are usually Christians writing about pagans and are therefore incredibly skewed in their portrayals. Or earlier on, particularly in the terms of Caligula, Commodus, and Domitian, they are members of the Senate. There are people like Cassius Dio and Herodian. They're senators. And the thing that all these damned emperors usually have in common is they were really, really vicious to the Senate. So you can expect the history written of their lives to be a little bit vicious. So yeah, I think, yes, you have to be able to look past senatorial skewing to see what they actually were like.
So Simon, what are you working on next? You got a new series planned if you finished Marius Mules now?
I'm actually doing a non-fiction one at the moment on the auxiliary units of Roman Britain, which it's just started, but it's getting there. And after that, there's another Praetorian to come, and there's a new series coming out with Head of Zeus next year, but I'm not at liberty to say what it is yet. But it's Roman.
Do you have a preference of writing the 2, non-fiction or fiction, or?
Oh, fiction every day. Quite apart from that, you can't do fart jokes and blood mizzle everywhere if you're writing non-fiction. But it's also that fear that you've missed something with non-fiction. I think, as I say, with fiction, yes, okay, you can't really get away with throwing a tomato at a Roman, but on the whole, a lot of things there's a lot of leeway, there's a lot of give in fiction. You can often find ways to explain things. In non-fiction, absolutely everything has to be up to, particularly in historical non-fiction, everything has to be archaeologically up to date and research-wise up to date. And the problem is, every month there are new inscriptions unearthed that change what we know about certain things. So you just have to keep absolutely on the ball. Even as I write this, I've covered so many units already. I'm on the next unit, but at the end I'm going to have to go back and do the units I've already done again, just in case knowledge has changed since I started writing the book.
Do you have a feeling of kind of self-consciousness? Because often I was listening to a Radio 4 program where there was a historical fiction author, and then Neil Ferguson, the historian, was on as well. And he was being very dismissive of historical fiction, which was outrageous, where he basically said, you just make stuff up. And, as we've established speaking to you today, I mean, that's clearly not the case. So, but as you've made the transition into the non-fiction field with at least one done, Agricola, and another one to come.
Yeah, one to come, yeah.
Do you have a kind of introspective look at yourself when you're writing a non-fiction?
I learn more. I did a classics degree, and I've learned more writing historical fiction about Rome and the ancient world in general than I ever did at university. In 3 years of university, I've learned less than I learned in 1 year writing. It's a constant education. In terms of writing non-fiction, I think it's even more of an education, but it is also more focused because you're dealing with one specific subject. When I did Agricola, everything was focused on the man's life. I hardly stepped outside that particular time zone and the locations where he was involved. But I learnt an awful lot about those times and places and people. I think you learn, I think in terms of writing, you learn everything you do anyway. A prime example being, I wrote, I can't forget which one it was, one of the Praetorian novels I wrote. The hero is coming into Rome, and I had him coming in alongside the Aqua Traiana aqueduct that comes in from the west, down on the Trastevere side of the river. And I thought, how do I describe it? How big is it? How much of it is underground? How much of it is in tunnels? How much of it's on bridges? And I thought, I don't know enough. And this was, I think this was during COVID, or for some reason, there was a reason I couldn't get there to actually go and look at it. I like to go to these places to look at what I'm writing about if I can. But I thought, right, the Aqua Traiana, I need to know where it's visible. And it fortunately is still there in one form or another. So, bingo, here we go, Google Street View. 6 hours, I think, I was just sat there, wrapped up in my PC with Google, following the Aqua Traiana from its source right the way into Rome, watching every foot of it pass alongside the road as I scrolled, just to see where it's visible, where it's not, what it does. In the end, it's one paragraph. In the whole book, it's one paragraph. And it's just scenery as he's walking into town, but it's right. And that I know now. I know that scene is right, which is great.
That's great stuff. Well, Simon, this has been fantastic to talk. Thanks so much for joining me.
My pleasure. It's been great to talk here.
And best of luck with everything. I mean, you've got many new books coming out, so I'll stick links in for listeners. But yeah, as I say, best of luck.
Fabulous. Thank you very much, Ollie.
Thank you for listening, and once again, Happy New Year from all of us at Aspects of History. Lots of great history to come, but until then, thank you and good night.